What movie or series lit your fuse and made you have to tell stories on screen?
Well, because I'm an actor. I mean, I did write screenplays and direct later. So the first stuff that really lit my fuse was very character driven, and it was all about the characters. And so for me, the early films I saw when I started on my career here, which was when I was 14, I wasn't a child actor. It was more of a, adolescent, teenage. And I saw, of course, a lot of the black and white films I saw on my mother's black and white television were, movies of John Garfield and Robert Mitchum, early movies like this. But, Brando and the early, that's what it was for me. And I think for a lot of actors of my generation, that was the triumvirate, Brando, Clift, and Dean, right? Those were the three. And those movies, that they made really lit a fuse for me as an actor. And I think the things that I took away from it were vulnerability and of the actors' performances, and also the ability to be spontaneous, improvise was such an important, really, thing. It was. I always remember the scene with Marlon Brando and Eva Marie Saint, where he puts on her glove when they're walking in the park, and it was an accident. It was something that happened where they were walking in the park, and she drops her glove, and he just sort of picks her glove up and puts it on, and she's talking to her until it squeezes into this glove. And it was one of those are the moments I remember, or even the moment like Brando and her in the bar talking, and nothing matches, nothing, like editors, like if they were looking for, for things being matching up, it would, but that gave this performance kind of an authenticity. Anyway, so it were those early films that I saw. And then as I saw them, I began to seek them out more, and I would go to revival theaters. Like I saw Postman Always Rings Twice with John Garfield and Lana Turner at the Thalia Theater. Remember that one up on 96th and Broadway. And of course, seeing, East of Eden with James Dean and Rebel Without a Cause and Place in the Sun with Montgomery Clift. And really that was it. And so then I remember, I think I saw Last Tango in Paris, which was much later. It was a film that I saw that I was really blown away, and really, I couldn't believe how intimate these actors were, how intimate Brando was, and for me, it wasn't about the sensational aspects of the movie, but more about the intimacy. It really spoke to what I wanted and what we as actors strived for, So that was the thing that lit the fuse for me earlier, and then later on, there were other things that influenced me as a filmmaker and as a storyteller, writer. When I did that movie, Over the Edge, I was so young, and the director, Jonathan Kaplan, was a really interesting character himself. He came from a very interesting background and worked with Roger Corman, but his family, his father was a great composer for film scores, and his family had been blacklisted during the and my first acting teacher, Molly McCarthy, she was a pupil, like a favorite pupil of Lee Strasberg when she was a young girl. But he used to call me Marlon, as sarcastically, because I wanted to do everything real. You know what I mean? Like, if I got to do something where I got to really do it, I was like, yeah, that's the way we do it. And that's what I wanted. I was a kid, so if I had the opportunity to destroy something, I wanted to really do it, right? If I got to throw the typewriter on the floor or whatever, then the writer comes in and says, you can't throw the typewriter on the floor because we have to rewrite tomorrow's scene, And I'd say, and the director, Jonathan, would say, oh, look, we got to change it. And I'd say, oh man, you lied to me, you told me. And he'd go, shut up, Marlon. He'd call me Marlon. It was just a sarcastic thing. But of course, for me, I really didn't know who Marlon Brando was, and that began the exploration. Watching films like On the Waterfront and Streetcar, and these films, which really were, and that it really became the thing, you know. And then of course there were the actors that came after them, De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, and other people that I, revered, in that way. So,
on your way up, what movie or series did you watch that was so good it made you question if you could ever rise to that level?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because mostly, I was really, let's just say, taken, or I don't know, admired so much what I saw. Like, for example, see Robert De Niro in Raging Bull. What he did with that performance was incredible to me. And likewise, the film that Scorsese had made, this was like something, I was young. I didn't think that was something that they did that I had so much admiration for. It didn't make me question myself. But, there have been, performances by actors, actresses, where you looked at what they did and I said, that's another level, stuff. That is really, I remembered seeing, even I looked at Meryl Streep, like what she did with Sophie's Choice, for example. What a performance, and there was so I don't ever remember, I can't speak specifically and say that these were things that made me question myself, although it did. I'm not saying I was without my own self-doubt at times. More times than not, my self-doubt would come out of, are the stars aligned for me? Not so much whether I was capable of doing it or not. I felt pretty confident in that way, not necessarily that it would work for me.
Whether it was your own work or approval from someone who mattered to you, what first gave you the confidence that you belonged?
Yeah, and there's almost like, because it's so many years, there's almost like not one incident, but there are certain milestones, right, where that happened. For example, Coppola, getting the green light from Francis, when he hired me, that was a real, that was a big deal for me. And it was very validating. It was also very exciting, of course. And, there were moments like that throughout. And of course, then when I did Drugstore Cowboy, right, it was another movie, and the response that the film got, was really validating and made me feel like, yeah. But again, it's difficult because when you're very young, people have a different idea, or they have ideas about what, it's that thing. It's like watching somebody grow and not really sure. And sort of when my ability catches up with their understanding of what I'm doing, instead of feeling misunderstood when you're younger and you're trying to do things, and it can be a little frustrating at times because you have to be patient, and it can be, kind of a little daunting, But, I would say this, and I want to just talk about this at the filmmaker side of it, and I hope I'm not dragging on too much here, but when I did direct my first film, the first, really the first and last that I did, was a great experience for me. And I co-wrote the script. And, that really was very validating. When you create something, you write something. Like I wrote a scene, for example, with James Caan, right? James Caan, we filmed the movie in Cambodia. The majority of the film took place in Cambodia. And I wrote the scene for Marvin, that was the character's name, that he begins to sing in a karaoke bar in fluent Khmer, which is the Cambodian language. And I wrote it, and I said, we'll see what happens when the actor gets there. He might end up singing Tony Bennett or something, and not in Khmer. And then I watched it unfold when we were filming, and it was really this great sense of like, and I had that experience so many times as a director. Many more times in a condensed period than I did as an actor, because then you're really watching your dreams or your ideas your vision come to fruition, and that's really, really satisfying, gratifying, you know. And so I had that experience many times as a filmmaker. You know.
What was the biggest obstacle you overcame that allowed you to turn the projects that influenced you into your own language?
That's a really great question, in fact, because it's so, it's really, that's it. That's where the rubber meets the road in a way. I found myself at a point in my career where I was frustrated with the kinds of projects that were being offered to me or the types of films, and I made a decision. And that's really the obstacle that I overcame, was finally saying, okay, I'm going to write my own thing, create a project for myself. And I just sort of said, I'm going to create a film that I would want to be in. And I called a writer friend of mine, Barry Gifford, who's a novelist, and I said, hey, listen, I want to write a script. And let's write a script together. He said, it's about time, he said to me. But of course, once I made that decision to do that, then 1,000 obstacles came, right? But they were obstacles that you get over, you pass, you get over those hurdles and you do it. And it was totally worthwhile. But the first obstacle was making a commitment to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make my own film. And so that was it. That was the obstacle for me. The payoff was not the cash and prizes kind of payoff. The payoff was that I got an experience that I'll always treasure, you know, with the people that I worked with, and the project. I'm very proud of that, and that experience was enriching, life enriching, really. And because it was an adventure, you know, you start off with a question, and the film is the answer to the question, you know, but it's a different answer than you thought you might get, you know. And it was gratifying. And some of the things I thought would happen didn't happen. And some of the things I thought would never happen happened, you know? So it's like, you know, it's just part of the journey. It was a great experience.
What keeps you optimistic that this industry will be able to rebound?
Well, two things. For one thing, as a creative person, the storyteller, actor, director, you know, the medium in which the story is told or the performance is there, it sort of doesn't really matter. I mean, if I think about my 10 favorite films, some of them I saw, like I said, on my mother's black and white TV. You know, maybe one of them I saw in the theater, maybe one of them I saw in a Betamax or you know what I'm saying, VHS. I don't really remember. So, but I do think that there's one development that's great with streaming, and that's this kind of long form television. You know, I think it's great. I haven't had too much experience in it, but the idea, the creative potential for telling a story over a long period of time, as you're seeing a lot in television now, I think is great. My experience, though, I think the thing that changed how you can tell stories and how you can do things now has more to do with the technology in the documentary world, for example. Like this new film I just made that we have coming up, El Gran Feove, is a documentary. It's a documentary. And some of the footage I shot 20 years ago. And I wasn't sure of what it was or what I was going to do with it. I knew it was good footage. And I think that being able to edit the way we can now digitally and being able to film the way we can now digitally really has given non-fiction, non-narrative sort of documentaries. It's really given this, it's like the golden age of documentaries, because documentaries, it's funny because it's one of the most difficult things I've ever done, is that you're sort of writing the script as you're editing the movie. It's all happening at once, and you can end up going in so many different directions, you know. And but I think with technology the way it is today, it really lends itself to making documentaries, you know. I think really does, and that's been a really interesting development, because I think it was really that this, for me, making Phaeobic, for example, it happened when it happened. It wasn't meant to happen before, and that's for a lot of reasons, not just for the technology.